8 canned chili brands sit on a single Tractor Supply shelf, and according to the USDA's own labeling policy book, chili con carne must contain real red meat, not fillers, not broth, not text. Yet when you flip several of those cans around, the label quietly admits the meat is thinned out, the beef is mechanically separated, or the beef portion is so small the can would fail an honest read of the front label. The shelf looks stocked, the flavor looks familiar, the brand looks trustworthy, but the can does not match what the front is selling. The pattern this video exposes is not that one brand is bad, it is that labels and ingredients can quietly drift apart on the most ordinary shelf-stable food in the pantry, and the canned chili shelf is where shoppers stop reading and start trusting. Each can in this countdown exposes a different label gap, ingredient shortcut, or test result that you only catch when you actually open the can, look at the meat, read the fine print, or run the can next to a competitor on the plate. Number 8. Clover Valley Chili with Beans. This is the store brand can most shoppers pass over because it has the shortest-looking ingredient list on the entire shelf. And that is exactly the problem. A short label looks honest. A short label looks clean. A short label looks like the company that made the can had nothing to hide. But according to chili taste test reviews published by Chowhound, Clover Valley Chili with Beans relies heavily on cornstarch as its thickener, and cornstarch carries a gummy texture that masks whatever is in the can underneath. When the thickener is louder than the meat was never the point of the recipe. Look at the front label. It says, chili with beans. According to the USDA's Food Standards and Labeling Policy Book, chili con carne must contain at least a specified minimum of fresh meat to qualify for the chili name. The can passes that test on paper, but the meat-to-sauce ratio on the plate does not match the picture. The beans are firm. The pork is present. The chili powder is real. The flavor is okay. The texture is gummy. This is the version that says, trust me, and then delivers a can that mostly delivers thickener. That matters for preppers because canned chili is a real convenience meal. Heat, eat, protein, calories, easy cleanup. When the gummy texture hits, the meal becomes something you eat because you have to, not because you want to. The label is not lying. It just is not telling you what you really wanted to know. The hidden weak link is not the bean. The hidden weak link is the thickener, and the thickener is what keeps the can cheap on the shelf. Watch the can pour. Watch how the spoon moves. That is the test the label never lets you run until the can is open on your counter. Most preppers never run that test because the can was bought for emergencies, not for evaluation. That is why the same can quietly sits at the back of the pantry for 2 years before someone actually opens it. And that is the moment the label gap shows up on the plate instead of on the back panel. Number 7. Armour Star Chili with Beans. The Armour can sits on the shelf with a heritage label that reads like an old trusted meat packing brand, and the company's own history goes back over 150 years to a Chicago meatpacking business. The label carries real credibility, but credibility on the label is not the same as credibility on the plate. In taste test comparisons and review threads, Armour Chili without beans has been described as having a gloopy consistency out of the can, and finding the Armour version with beans in some regions has become harder because shoppers reach for it, do not love what they find, and quietly leave it on the shelf for the next customer. The label promises a hearty chili. The can delivers a thick, sticky pour that the spoon has to fight through. That textural drag is what gives away a chili that has been stretched with binder rather than built with meat. For the prepper pantry, this matters because canned chili functions as a no-cook emergency meal. Open can, heat, serve, done. When the can fights the spoon, the meal becomes work. The label still reads well. The brand is still familiar. The can still says beef and pork. But the binding agent does the heavy lifting, and a hungry adult can taste the difference before the spoon ever reaches the bowl a second time. The hidden weak link here is the heritage label. A 150-year-old brand is allowed to quietly let quality drift because the label still carries the trust the company earned a century ago. The can has to earn that trust again on every single shelf, and on the Armour shelf that re-earning does not always happen. Watch the can pour. Watch how the spoon moves. That is the test the label never lets you run until the can is open on your counter. Number 6. Hormel Turkey Chili with Beans. Hormel is the most popular chili brand in the United States, and the front label carries that familiarity with absolute confidence. The Hormel turkey rendition changes the protein on the front of the can. It still says chili. It still says beans. It still says Hormel. The can looks exactly like every other Hormel chili you have ever opened, except the protein inside is turkey. That swap is not a scandal. Turkey chili is a real category. Many households use it intentionally, but what the label does not make obvious is that a Hormel turkey chili with beans runs slightly soupier compared to the beef standard, and a soupier can means the meat count per spoonful drops. According to USDA labeling guidance, products that meet the chili standard and include poultry must be labeled in a way that makes the poultry visible in the product name. Hormel does follow the rule. The label does say turkey. The expectation still says beef, and that expectation gap is exactly what most shoppers walk past. For the prepper, this matters because canned chili in the pantry often means the meal I have not planned for. When the unplanned meal is turkey instead of beef, the mouth remembers the swap even when the brain does not. Kids notice. Hungry adults notice. The can still works. It just works differently than the label suggests, and a family that built their chili expectations around the Hormel beef version will have a learning curve the label never warned them about. This is also the can most likely to leave a household quietly disappointed at 9 p.m. on a winter weeknight. The can in the pantry that the family thought they were not looking forward to becomes the can the family actually was looking forward to, and the difference between expectation and outcome shows up the moment the spoon touches the bowl. The lesson is not to avoid turkey chili. The lesson is to read what is on the front, including the protein. Number 5. Wolf Brand Lean Beef Chili. Wolf Brand has been around for more than 100 years, and the Texas heritage gives the label a credibility that most store brands cannot buy. The no-bean lean beef chili reads like the leanest, simplest, most honest can on the entire shelf. Beef, pork, garlic, sugar, spices. Lean beef means less fat. Less fat means longer confidence in the can. The label is built for the prepper who reads ingredients the way other people read expiration dates. But lean is not the same as full, and lean beef chili can read as thin in flavor because the fat that carries chili taste has been trimmed out. Taste test rankings put Wolf Brand no-bean lean beef further down the ladder than the brand's reputation would suggest, not because the can is bad, but because the can has been optimized for lean rather than for flavor. You can see the meat, you can see the spices, you can see the broth. The flavor still feels like it is hiding behind the label. That is the lean chili trap. The label answers every health-conscious question a shopper has. The can answers none of the flavor questions that come after. For preppers who want a chili that earns a real meal slot, lean beef chili without beans often becomes the can that sits unused at the back of the shelf. The label sold the can. The plate sent it to the back of the pantry, which is the worst spot any canned food can be in. Wolf Brand's Texas heritage still means something. The can is still worth keeping in the pantry. It is just worth keeping with a clear understanding that the lean version and the regular version are not the same meal, even when the front label makes them look identical at first glance. Number 4. Stag Chili with Beans. The Stag label is famous for one thing among people who actually open cans: visible ingredients. Reviewers consistently describe being able to see the peppers, the chunks, the texture of the broth. The label promises chunky chili, and the can delivers on chunky chili. That is the rare case where the front label and the inside of the can line up. But chunky on a label and high meat content on a label are not the same sentence. In independent taste test rankings, Stag Chili with Beans has been rated lower than the brand reputation suggests because the chunkiness reads as bean-heavy and pepper-heavy in a way that makes the meat feel like a guest at its own meal. The texture is excellent. The chunkiness is real. The protein per spoonful is smaller than the label suggests, which is the entire problem this countdown keeps returning to. For preppers, the takeaway is practical and worth remembering. A can that delivers visible ingredients is a can that feels like real food. A can that delivers visible protein is a can that fills a real meal. Stag does the first one well. The second one is where the label and the can step out of sync, and that step is invisible until you spoon the can onto a plate. The hidden weak link on Stag is not quality. The hidden weak link is the word chunky. Chunky is a feel word. Meat count is a number. The shopper who reads the front gets a feel. The shopper who reads the back gets a number. The two reads do not match, and the plate confirms which red was right. Number 3. Brookdale Chili. Brookdale is one of those store-brand cans that lives in the discount grocery aisle and looks like a safe choice. The label says chili with beans. The can says chili with beans. The brand name is forgettable. The price is friendly. For a prepper watching the budget shelf, Brookdale is the can that says, I am being practical with my stock-up budget. In taste rankings, Brookdale lands in the middle of the pack. Not bad, not great, mostly present. The chili has texture and protein, but the seasoning has been dialed back to a level where a can opened alone feels flat. Add it to a hot dog. Add it to nachos. Add it to a Chili Mac skillet. It works. Open the can and serve it as a standalone meal, and the flavor falls short of what the label suggests it should deliver. That quiet flavor gap is what makes Brookdale the kind of can that ends up half-eaten and pushed to the back of the pantry. The label sells a complete meal. The can sells an ingredient. The mismatch is small enough that most shoppers never call it out, big enough that a hungry household feels it across 2 or 3 meals in a row, which is the moment a pantry chili goes from useful to wasted. The lesson here is not to skip Brookdale. The lesson is to know what Brookdale actually is. Brookdale is a topping chili. Brookdale is a filler chili. Brookdale is a chili that needs the rest of the meal around it to feel complete. The label does not say any of that, the plate does. Number 2. Hormel Chili Vegetarian with Beans. Hormel won the chili sweep in recent canned chili rankings, including the vegetarian category, and the label carries that recognition with confidence. Hormel Chili Vegetarian with Beans is, on paper, a clean, plant-based chili that still meets the chili standard in flavor, texture, and bean weight. Vegetarian chili can absolutely work. This one does. The label problem lives in the chili vegetarian wording. It says vegetarian. It does not say what is making it vegetarian. Shoppers who read the front label quickly and skip the back panel miss what kind of plant protein is carrying the meal, what thickener is doing the binding, and whether the can carries enough standalone flavor to be a meal or only enough to be a topping. Hormel makes a credible vegetarian chili. The label just expects you to trust it without finishing the read. For preppers who keep 1 or 2 plant-based meal options in the pantry, this is the can that delivers on the front label, but withholds the details on the back. The hidden weak link is not the food. The hidden weak link is the label's quiet assumption that you stopped reading at vegetarian and never turned the can over. This is also the can most likely to sit on the shelf next to a beef chili and confuse a tired shopper at the end of a long day. The can looks like chili. The can says chili. The label does not shout the difference. That quiet difference is exactly what makes label reading worth doing before the can is opened, and not after. Number 1. Wendy's Chili with Beans. This is the can that beat every other brand in a Serious Eats canned chili taste test, and it won because the inside of the can refuses to act like a generic canned chili. The Wendy's can includes beef tallow, real beef broth, kidney and pinto beans, tomato puree, diced tomatoes, onions, celery, green bell peppers, and smoke flavor. Those last 2 ingredients, beef tallow and smoke flavor, showed up in Wendy's and almost nowhere else on the entire shelf. That is the front label versus ingredient lesson that ties the entire countdown together. The Wendy's can is the only can where the ingredients list explains why the can wins the taste test. The label says Wendy's. The can says real food. That is exactly the gap in the other direction, a label that undersells what is inside. What most preppers miss is that the same lessons apply to every chili can on this list. The label is not lying. The label is doing what labels are designed to do, selling the can. The ingredients list is doing its job too, sitting quietly on the back panel waiting for someone to read it. The shopper who reads both sides walks out with a real chili. The shopper who reads only the front walks out with a can that mostly delivers thickener, mostly delivers binder, mostly delivers something closer to soup than to the can pictured on the front. And that is exactly where this list started. Most canned chili at Tractor Supply is not dangerous. Most canned chili at Tractor Supply is not fake. Most canned chili at Tractor Supply is exactly what the label says it is, in the order the label wants to say it. The hidden weak link is that the label does not have to put the most important sentence at the top. Look at the can, look at the back, look at the meat, look at the thickener. That is the test the shelf never gives you on its own. So if you want to act on this week, grab one can with a short ingredient list and a thickener near the top, and one can with a short ingredient list that does not mention cornstarch or modified starch at all. Compare them on the plate. That comparison is the entire lesson of this countdown in a single meal. This month, walk the canned chili shelf twice, once reading the front, once reading the back, and notice how many cans look completely different on the second pass. Before your next stock-up trip, decide which 2 cans earned the pantry slot by looking at the meat, the thickener, and the back panel together. None of this requires a special trip. None of this requires a panic buy. It only requires the same 2-second read that the label was never designed for. The calm way to handle this is to stop treating canned chili like a blind emergency food. Buy 1 can before you buy 12. Open it on an ordinary night. Eat it plain first, then with rice or crackers, and ask whether the can still works when you are tired, busy, or eating it without extras. That one small practical kitchen test tells you more than the front label ever will. It also protects your shelf space, because the worst canned food in a prepper pantry is not the cheapest one. It is the one nobody in the house will eat when the day is already hard. The second pass is the label pass. Check whether meat appears early, whether starch appears early, whether broth is doing too much work, and whether the flavor depends on smoke, tallow, peppers, or actual vegetables instead of just salt and thickener. That does not mean every cheap chili fails. It means every cheap chili has to prove itself before it earns a case slot. Which canned chili at Tractor Supply did you open and think, this is not what the label promised?